recording this much later today than I intended because my camera was dead and then we went to see a movie. It has been several months since the last time I sewed, and technically you will be seeing this before you see the last thing that I sewed. I kind of did them in reverse order. But we are starting the rebuild of Alyce's smock and bodice this evening. Now it is already 10:51 in the evening. I'm not gonna push myself too hard today. I obviously meant to get more done today, but things worked against me, but that's all right. We went to see Napoleon. It was mostly good. I have a few critiques here and there. Otherwise, I was very impressed with it. And my boyfriend, military historian, was also mostly impressed, but I digress. So I have had the muslin pieces for Alyce's smock cut for quite some time. So now I actually need to sew the toile together. So I'm gonna start on that this evening. I'm gonna get as far as I can, and then tomorrow I will be doing the toile for the new version of the bodice. I will need to have the bodice neckline fully determined before I finish the neckline of the smock on the finished version, because I want the size of the neckline of the smock to be just the slightest bit smaller, like a quarter to a half inch smaller at most than the neckline of the bodice. So I'm gonna have to make both mock-ups and then probably finish the bodice and then do the smock, kind of working in reverse. But this is also preparing me for better completing Sybil's costume, as it is recommended to have your pair of bodies, the stays, the corset, fully determined, have the size of the neckline of the pair of bodies fully determined before you finish the smock for that ensemble. So doing it this way with Alyce means it'll hopefully be easier with Sybil, even though Sybil is more complexly dressed. So, but as soon as I can get Alyce's two pieces rebuilt, I can then move on to finally building Sybil's pieces. She may not be finished before the end of the year, but I will have enough that I can start to showcase her, because she is very, very eager to meet all of you. I am starting over watching Critical Role from the beginning. I am on Vox Machina, episode 1, Arrival at Craghammer, because I forgot where I left off. YouTube did not save my progress on it, apparently. And I'm hoping that in watching it, I will get better ideas in terms of role-playing my own characters, as well as doing voices and sound effects when I DM. And I'll talk more about it in another video, because this is about making costumes. So I'm gonna work for the next hour. I'm not gonna go past midnight. That seems a little absurd. I was up late last night and I would like to get to bed a little bit earlier so that I maintain a somewhat reasonable sleep schedule, even though I am definitely nocturnal. We start, it says to press under. I'm not gonna do any pressing for the mock-up. It doesn't seem necessary to me, because this will potentially be pulled back apart in order to trace off the pattern for the final smock once I'm sure of any adjustments I want to make. So that out of the way, we start by pressing under, or I'll just stitch under, the outside edge of the neck facing by a 1/4 inch, and then attaching that to the collar of the main smock. For Alyce, I am gathering the neckline. So I will actually need to gather down the neckline edges to the size of the facing edges before I can attach them. And that's the most intensive part. I hate doing gathering, but it makes sense for her to have a gathered neckline and for Sybil to have a smooth neckline in my mind. That is their preferences, so we're going to work with it.
Yeah. Enjoy, gentlemen.
What time of day is it?
Best we can tell, it's they run 8-10 on most other races, just because it makes it easier for me to know that work.
That's right for us. Oh, we were wondering if we might, search. What to talk
I did the gathering of the neck edge. I think I did all of the gathering, including the stitch, but a gathering stitch isn't that difficult. I did run 2 rows of gathering stitches on all 4 sides of the neck opening on the main smock body, just because, as I've explained, I think previously, I've had some unfortunate experiences with gathering threads popping on me when I've tried to gather too much material, so just as a safety thing, I'm gonna run 2 rows of stitches every time. But I gathered it down. I think in the final one, I'm gonna need to make the neck opening even larger than it currently is because the gathers aren't that impressive currently, so I think I will need to extend it another inch out probably on all 4 sides, just so that there's a bit more material and a bit more oomph. I might even make the entire smock wider to accommodate the larger neck opening so that there's not like too much of a reduction in the shoulder width as well. But the neck opening has been gathered down and stitched to the neck facing opening, and it is now about 5 minutes after midnight, so I'm gonna call it for this evening and pick up tomorrow. But now that the facing is on, I just need to pin on. I'm supposed to turn this in and press it. I will turn it in, but probably like just tack down the corners to keep it in place. Stitch the gores onto the sides, the gussets onto the sleeves, sew up the sleeve seams, attach the sleeves, and then sew up the side seam from hem to gusset, and then turn it right side out and try it on. It really is not difficult, especially now that I've made this pattern twice. This will be my 3rd time stitching it start to finish. I'm gonna hang this on my dress form overnight and take the rest of the evening, but I will see you right back here in the morning to keep sewing. I yesterday finished most of the steps for the shift mock-up for Alyce. I think I mentioned previously I don't like how shallow the gathering is on the neckline, but I'm also looking at it on the model and I think the neckline is still a little too big. I'll figure out the exact placement I want it to be in when I rebuild the bodice. I will figure all of that out in a little bit, but I have the rest of the steps done. I still managed to technically sew the gores on the wrong side. It's a confusing thing in that because of how the side seam goes together, I keep stitching the gores to the wrong side to get their seam allowances on the inside, and then forgetting that they're gonna turn again. I keep screwing it up, so I'm gonna have to be very careful about putting together the final smock. I also think I am going to take an approach with the gores that I've seen done a little bit before, where you turn one pair technically the wrong way and have the straight grain go into the side seam. Hi, Bramble. You turn the straight grain into the side seam and the cross grain into the gore seam, and that way it strengthens the side seam more because it's not 2 diagonal cut sections going vertically. It's going to screw with the hemline a little bit, but I figure ultimately the hemline doesn't need, like, the hemline of the shift is not the important part. The hemline of the skirt going over it is the important part, and the skirt's already done. It's practically floor length. It'll be fine. Since I have most of the steps done, what I'm gonna do now is run the gather stitches for the cuffs of the sleeves, and then I'm gonna go sit and finish the episode of Critical Role I'm watching while I gather those down to the size of the wrist. And then this mock-up will be done, and then I can start tracing off the mock-up for the new version of Alyce's bodice and get that stitched together, and then whatever adjustments need to be made to the smock will happen after that bodice mock-up is done. I may even make the finished bodice, the new bodice, all the way through before I make the new shift all the way through, just to be absolutely sure I'm happy with it, because I'm pickier about this, and if I'm happy with it, Alyce will be happy with it. So, rainy, gloomy winter days have been making it very difficult to get work done. I will be honest on that one, but we are very, very close. Let us run some gather stitches. got the gathering done. It's not super deep or intense, but it's there. And now I have the facing pinned on. I'm going to baste it in place to make sure that I have it positioned correctly so that when it's turned inside, this side where the edge is folded to should be against the shift, and the clean side that only has the tacking stitches should be against the flash. So I'm going to baste it, make sure that it turns out correctly, and then do the final stitch. Alright, I have pinned the side gores on, and now I will stitch them in place. Gussets are on, and I have pressed the seam allowances in, so that is hanging there. And I was about to move on to the sleeve and realized I forgot to cut out the gussets, so I need to cut out 2 gussets before I can continue. But seeing it as it is 11 and I don't want to deal with spreading out and cutting the fabric tonight, I'm gonna call it and go work on some other stuff, and I will pick this back up on Monday because I will be busy basically all day tomorrow and all day Sunday, what with it being Easter, and then I'm streaming on Sunday night. So Monday will be the earliest I can get back to this, but I think I should be able to finish it on Monday, especially since that's our movie night, so we have no other plans that night, and he doesn't work the next morning, so I can stay up late if I need to. So I'll see y'all again on Monday. Got the gussets cut out, and I've got this one pinned on, so now I'm gonna stitch it on here, and then I'm gonna stitch this edge to the other side to recreate what that looks like in the instructions.
You just gotta trust the right. Don't have to be scary. You just gotta follow the light. You're able to be happy. You can do whatever you like. You don't have to be steady. You don't have to be.
I don't know where the other one went. I got the gussets on the sleeves, and I went ahead and did the sleeve seam as well. So now I've got it pinned along the shoulder of the shift, and I'm going to stitch this in place, pin the other one in, and do the same thing. Got the sleeves on. I actually had a mishap where I did one of them inside out, but I got it taken off and put back on correctly. So now we're doing the side seams. I've already done one, and I've pinned this one all the way down. I'm gonna stitch that in place as well. Then all that's left to do is to hem the bottom and run the gather stitches for the cuffs and gather them down. I may leave those for tomorrow, though I might get as far as running the gather stitch and then worry about gathering it tomorrow. Let's do a side seam, and I think I'll leave the hem for tomorrow as well. I'll put it on a hanger overnight so that it can, stretch as much as it needs to from gravity. Last thing I'll do is run the gather stitch for the cuffs after we do the side seam.
Don't have to be steady. You don't have to be. You don't have to be steady. You don't have to be.
Changed my mind and went ahead and gathered these down tonight, just so it's one less step I have to do tomorrow. Now I will just need to turn that raw edge in and stitch it down, or I will use some twill tape or bias binding to edge it, and then hem the bottom, and we're done. As always, I have the world's greatest assistant helping me out today. Nearly pulled the shift off of the desk. But in the sake of using what I have, I did find some 7/8 inch hem tape. This was a length left over from some other project. I have another unopened package. It's not quite wide enough to do what I want with the cuffs, so I've stitched 2 lengths together and will bind it like this. I don't care about the excess on the inside. I'm just worried about the exterior appearance. So if I need to fold over and stitch down the excess on the inside, I will. So this will probably be enough for one cuff with a little bit of excess. I already folded over the ends by 1/2 inch, but this is going to be longer than I actually need for one sleeve. So I'll do the same thing with what's in the package here. And then once those are bound, I will turn up the hem and get that stitched. The hem hem up about 1/2 inch, so I am stitching at 3/8 to make sure I catch the entire hem on the inside. I am stitching from the outside because my bobbin thread is the wrong color, but this is the last step. And once this is done, Alyce will be here in the morning to try it on and give her final thoughts on what she thinks of the new version. And just like that, she's all done. I may at some point remove the sleeve and redo it to be longer because this does not quite come all the way to the wrist. But at the same time, it's kind of better because if it's not going all the way to the wrist in the first place, it hopefully means it's not going to be directly in the way of all of the work as much. But there may also be a way to get it to go all the way to the wrist by potentially pinning the shoulder where it needs to be under the bodice. Because I forget about this, but I was recently reminded that a lot of fashion all the way up into the 17th, 18th, and even parts of the 19th centuries didn't have fixed in closures. They would literally just use pins, not unlike the draping pins that we have now. These very, very small, barely noticeable heads, like this kind of pin, which often you will still find in clothing you buy in the store, like if you buy certain kinds of shirts or dresses or whatever. Sometimes as you're taking off the tags, you will find one of these silver pins in there. Often they're a bit more like this, where instead of a flat head, they have a very tiny ball head. I have several that I collected that were just left in clothing. So using pins to keep things in place was a normal thing, just like piecing to make the most out of the fabric you had rather than buying more and ending up with excess. But she is done, and so we will see Alyce in the morning wearing it and giving her final thoughts. Well, here it is, the finished new version of the ship. I love it so much. Alirien did a fantastic job redoing this. The sleeves don't quite come up into my elbows. The cuffs are a little bit tighter, but honestly I like this better. They're going to stay put on my arm when I need a bit more of my arms free and need my sleeves not to get dirty. But again, the purpose of this sort of thing is to get dirty so that the rest of my clothing doesn't. But it fits beautifully. Because the linen can tend to be a bit translucent, especially in such bright sunlight as we have today, I have borrowed a couple of underlayers from Alirien just to show you. And I'm wearing a slightly different pair of boots from last time, but you can see the hem is not quite so long, so it's not quite as unwieldy. The shoulders fit very nicely. There's no awkward tapering in the back. Everything feels just so much more cleanly lined, and now I have two shifts so that I can wear one while I wash the other. It's perfect. It really is. I am very excited to have this option to wear underneath my bodice and my skirts, and I cannot wait to see how she does with the new bodice as well, so that I have a couple of those to trade in and out. But I'm very, very happy with this version, and I think she would love to hear from all of you as well to see what you think of this one compared to the old one, which one you think looked better. I personally think this one's a lot better. She's learned a lot, and I'm very proud of her, and I'm very proud to have this to wear to show off her craftsmanship. Thank you so much for watching the video. We really hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, Alirien tells me you should know where all the buttons and links, whatever those are to show your love for this entry. If you would like to see more like this video specifically, there is apparently a playlist linked up here and down there of all of the costume content she has made so far, as well as the event playlist of all of the Ren fairs and conventions and other such things that Alirien has gone to if you want more Renaissance related things to do with the garb that she has made. If you would like to find Alirien elsewhere and see what other adventures she's getting up to, you can find a Linktree portal below as well for her Instagram, Facebook, and so on. And we would like to give a huge special shout out to the coven of patrons who continue to be most pivotal in supporting all of these adventures, particularly Candle member Mitchell and Crystal member Unimportant. And if you, dear viewer, would like to join their ranks, check the Linktree portal again below for the Patreon, where pledges start at $1 a month. Gramercy again, stay tuned for more gaming VODs as well as the rebuild of my bodice to go with this brand new perfect shift, and we will see you all again very soon. Keep aiming, my loves. Mwah! And sláinte.